Okay, so we're moving on to the second part of the observational drawing exercise. And at this point, the exercise could branch off in different ways. You could get the coloured pencils out or the oil pastels. You could even get some paints, because we've got quite light pencil here, haven't we, that's established the general shape. You could go forward using colour. So this is an example. Here's something different that I did with a student last week. And I used coloured pencils just to get these beautiful tones. And this is a lovely pomegranate, and this was an orange. It's not finished yet, but I'm quite happy with it. And so I did start this the same way as I started our example here. Now, before we get going with shading, I just want to show you another picture that I did yesterday. So this is the same bowl of fruit with slightly different arrangement, but this is what I mean by shading, and this is all of the different texture, the different ways that you can use shading. So this is the kind of thing that you're visualizing. I just wanted to show this to you before I complete our model here. So with shading, it helps something look realistic, and I'm going to carry on this exercise with just graphite pencils and really capture the shades. So we won't have colour included, but it will really help to understand different tonal value. Now, for this, I'm going to change my pencil. If you don't have any other drawing pencils, it would really help to have something slightly softer. So I would encourage you to consider getting some 6B pencils. Here's another one I've got. And these are really good for shading. Just the softness of them is so important for getting that level of depth. And that's what helps to create a successful drawing. Okay, and yep, so I've got my 6B pencil. I'm going to start just shading one, and then I'm going to show you something else. So I've got my apple here. And what is useful is to get the children to see the lightest point, where is it reflecting the light? And that's the bit that you leave out. You let the paper shine through for the light bit. And what I always suggest is that when you're shading, follow the shape of the object it is that you're shading. So because apples are sort of spherical, I'm doing strokes that follow the shape of the fruit. So I'm just shading this first piece, and then I'm going to show you how children can get used to these. Notice that I'm holding it at a slight angle, and the contact with the paper is really important, just to get that uniform softness. And all the time I'm flicking back and forth with my eyes, seeing where the dark bits are. This apple is pretty straightforward. There are other fruits in this bowl that are more interesting, but I've got the depth there. It's beginning to be recognisable, because remember, we're sort of tricking people. We're tricking them into thinking that a two-dimensional thing is actually a three-dimensional thing, and we use shading to do that. Now, a useful thing to do is to actually draw a scale with different values. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to go to the top of my piece of paper. With your class, you could do this on a separate piece of paper so that if the drawing turns out beautifully, which we hope it will, somebody might like to frame it, but it's good to have this reference. What I'm doing is I'm drawing a 12 centimetre line, and I'm going to make 6 boxes. So in art you do have to use some maths sometimes. So 2 centimetres for each box, and they should be able to do this even quicker than me. So I'm making 6 boxes. Okay. So I'm going to label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they'll like this. The first one So the first box, they want to colour it as dark as possible. So this helps them to just free up a bit and helps them understand the pressure that they have with the pencil. So we don't want any broken pencils here, but they can press quite hard, but at a slight slant, not vertical like that, not like that. So this just helps them to get used to the pencil and how much it can do. Okay, so that's our number 1 square, and it's really nice and dark, almost black. So that's our darkest point in our drawing. Now number 2 will be slightly less pressure. Okay, and this just, it's quite a simple exercise, as you can see. It's pretty mindless. But what we're focusing on is noticing the difference in tonal value, which is basically how light or dark something is. So this is to give an understanding of midtones, so that when they're shading in their subject matter, they won't be doing the same sort of level of shading for each thing, because otherwise it would be all grey, wouldn't it? So number 4, I'm going quite light now. And then this is where it gets slightly more challenging. This is where the sensitivity is really required. The number 5 box is really very, very light. Number 6 box is going to be just white, just paper. So that'll be your highlights and things. So number 5 is probably the hardest one to do. I'm just very, very gingerly just stroking the paper. Now this is a very good exercise for children to do, because it really helps to notice the sensitivity that they have. I didn't learn this until quite late on in my adult life, and I do wish I'd had it when I was a child. So I think that'll be really beneficial for them. So we've got number 1, really dark. Number 2, not quite so dark. Number 3, sort of a general mid-tone. Number 4, getting lighter. Number 5, quite light. And number 6 is just paper. Okay, so we're now going to use this reference scale, and we're going to train our eyes to recognize the different levels of tone in something. And that will help us to produce a really, really stunning picture. So I'm going to carry on now. And there's not really a hard and fast rule for this. I tend to start at one point and work my way out. Now I can see that this shadow on this pear is really quite dark, so I'm going to do that. And it needs to be darker than the apple that's on top of it. it might help to encourage them to incorporate the texture as well, or the pattern that's on the skin of these fruits. So the pear is quite patchy and it's got these little spots on it. So what I'm doing is that I'm sort of moving my pencil around to copy the little shapes, as well as varying the degree of pressure. So I'm quite light here, so I'm using sort of maybe number 5, number 4 on my scale, but I'm also sort of doing some little dotty shapes, and that helps to just capture the uniqueness of this pear. And you can do it at the same time as shading. So this is where you really get them to see what makes this pear different from the other fruits. And this is when you'll begin to notice just all sorts of wonderful things happening. You know, children can surprise you about what they notice. And doing an observational drawing, it really brings out what children notice. And sometimes they notice little details that we miss. And it can be absolutely fascinating to give them the opportunity to really look. Okay, I just want to, this is probably my favourite fruit in the fruit bowl, this persimmon. I just love these fruits, and it's visually probably one of the most interesting because of this beautiful leafy star-like pattern on top. Now if you want, you can use the sharper, harder pencil to get the details around the leaves. So as you can see, the leaves on this fruit are quite sort of dry and flaky. So you can go back to just a harder pencil just to get those really nice fine lines and really capture the texture of it. It's got these little ridges. And that's all the kind of things we want to look at in art. We want to capture all those little details and really focus on what's there and bring it to life. You have to sort of exaggerate things when you're drawing, because anyone will believe a photograph. But with a drawing, sometimes you have to exaggerate. And sort of enhance and accentuate the different things that are there. So that's using a slightly sharper pencil, a slightly harder, and that really helps to create a successful leafy blossom top to this fruit. And the rest of the fruit is quite shiny, so I'm noticing and leaving out where that white mark is, that where it reflects the light. And it's a very smooth fruit, so I'm going to use a very nice slanty pencil. I'm holding it not too far down again, just to shade, and holding it to the side, because sometimes I've seen children just hold things right down here, and it's very difficult to get a good shaded result if they do that. So do keep an eye on them.